Hi there, this is Jason. We're looking at an e-learning resource here, and I thought I would take you through a series of sort of features and ideas and principles with an e-learning resource in terms of it being an experience for the learner. Um, and by that I mean, we can always put up some source content, put up some quizzes, find ways of checking and monitoring how much they've learned and know about some of that content. But how do we get the learners to sort of get this feeling that they're getting more of an experience through the e-learning? And there's four sort of things that they're not the only things, but they're four very important things, I think, which I'm going to show to you through this resource. They are scenery, sound, self-awareness, and scenarios. And I think those four S's can all be very crucial when it comes to creating an experience for the learner. So what you're looking at here is a resource that's being put together for 16 to 18-year-old trade students. And it's a combined safety and literacy resource that they're working on here. So I'm just going to refresh it to show you what it looks like when the learners actually open it up. It'll actually open up like this. Now, straight away I'm talking about scenery here. This is the building, this is the school where the learners attend the classes. And I didn't start it off with things flying around and sound bursting out because I think that first scene is really important for learners in terms of feeling calm, not feeling that they're getting stuff actually thrown at them through the screen. It's possible to overdo your sound and your sight and your animation and your action. That can actually be a bit intimidating to some learners, if there's a lot to look at on the screen. Now they've got a menu here which sort of indicates how the learning resource works in terms of the sequence, and then we've got our input text along the top. And I think a lot of learners just like that chance to have a look at the interface without feeling like something's about to happen, bang. Just let me have a look at it first. Let me get a grip on this a bit. And the scene we've set here is, well, this is the school, this is the institute. And when you're ready, you can click on the screen to get started. So I'm just going to shrink this menu here. And they may decide to actually open up one of these texts and just see what's going on. But when they are ready to go, well, they can click on the screen and we'll see what happens. Okay, so they've got a bit of an intro that comes in there. I'll just turn the music down a little bit. It's always good to have a music control volume if you're going to have a lot of sound in your resource. Some people don't like to have music blaring out at them, so it's good to give them that option to turn it down or even to turn it off completely. But we'll leave it on at a moderate rate. And the first thing they're going to be asked to do is to type in their first name. So I'm going to put in my name. And go. And as you can see, we've got another scene already. Now I'll just turn that volume down. And this, that brings up my second point, the sound. That soundtrack was quite deliberately chosen in terms of being a bit energetic, a bit industrial sounding, because that's what I wanted to use to go with this idea of these guys work in the hard trades, the so-called hard trades, and I wanted something that sort of got that feel across and that feeling of a bit of energy without it being over the top or without it being too corny. So I did actually spend a long time looking for appropriate sound to go with this, and you can notice here that it's talking to me directly. It says thanks Jason and welcome. And as they go through these initial introductory assignment overview stages, Now, this brings up that idea of self-awareness. A lot of people call this personalization in an e-learning resource. When it says it talks to them directly and actually mentions them by name. I call it more sort of self-awareness because, look, I don't think any of our learners out there are under any delusions in terms of knowing that this is basically an algorithm that is set up to remember their name. I don't think they think that this is a sentient program that actually knows them and actually talks to them. So I think it's not so much a matter of trying to fool them into thinking that this is a live AI. It's more just a reminder that you, the learner, you're here, you're part of this, you're doing this, and that's why I would refer to it as self-awareness. If they can get the regular reminder that it's them that are doing this, that they are the ones participating in it, I think it just creates that awareness that they're not somebody clicking the buttons, they're a person that's interacting with this material. So that's what I meant by self awareness. Now, the scenery here, I've got a bit of a work safety style theme, and I'm using quite a lot of imagery. I've spent a lot of time searching around and finding the right imagery to go with this. A couple of different hard trades, because we've got about 17 or 18 hard trades that we cater to with this cohort. So, I've got some wood workshop, some metal workshop, electrical, that sort of stuff. And that scenery, I think, is important to get that feel across. Now, I'm just going to now, in terms of this being an experience, the assignment is broken into 3 parts. Now, what I want to do is, rather than just say, they've got to read these 3 texts, that they correlate to the 3 parts of the assessment, and these instructions actually work through and explain that to them. But I wanted to do something that was a little bit more original, a little bit more sort of grab their attention in terms of starting off each part of the assignment, each section that goes with these 3 texts. I didn't want them just to open up the text and then answer quiz questions. I wanted to do something a little bit more novel. So let's look at what I came up with. Turn the volume back up, not too high. If we go to the first part of the assignment, now, as you can see there, it was just a wood workshop thing. If you actually look at the text that we're actually going to read in a moment, it's about not stuffing around in a workshop, and it's about being careful with your PPE, your personal protective equipment. So that first little slide gave them that scene of the workshop, and it did sort of introduce that idea of not stuffing around. But then it goes to this scene here. It says, perhaps you're a bit in the dark when it comes to safety glasses. Look for a green or blue space to start shedding some light on the issue. And I think, I'm trying to create curiosity here. So, what are they talking about? Oh, there's a green spot. Just by wandering around on the screen, I got this green spot. Alright, so we'll click on that and see what happens. Okay, well, we've got a bit of a picture of a workshop area with the safety glasses. Yep, you'll certainly need to be wearing safety glasses there. Keep looking. Oh, there's another thing. So the idea is that the learners will get these little messages that go with these different parts of a scene. They'll wander around until they see something light up, and they'll click it. And yeah, as you can see, these glasses keep popping up, and you start to realize, well, this is all one big scene here. That's right, whack them on the moment you walk through the door, and you're starting to see the big picture yet? Well, hopefully they are. And basically here it's saying, wear your safety glasses at all times, no matter where you are in the workshop. Do you get the picture? Now, if they press no here, and I've got a lot of students who'll say, well, no, I don't get it, just to be a bit smart. Well, if they, if they click on no here, well, it'll say, fine, maybe we need to present that to you again. It'll take them back to the start of this scene and say, look for the spaces again, work your way through it again. Whereas if they say yes, these things will all move out of the way and the glasses will all peel off, and then the scene will fade and it will go to the first part of this assessment. Now, the important thing there was that workshop scene was actually the workshop that they will actually be working in. That's our own workshop. So whenever you can use realistic or actual scenes in your e-learning material, scenes that correlate to things they're actually doing on site somewhere, that really does create that feeling of an experience, because it links to a real world experience they can relate to. And these guys will either have already been in that workshop or will be just about to go in there to do something. So that's good in terms of the scenery. And that was a sort of scenario to some degree, but it was more of a sort of a quick discovery style scenario where they get that idea of the safety goggles. And we did the same thing here in the second part of the assignment, which is the second text called Playing the Percentages. And let's just have a quick look at how I handled that. Okay, so this one's about playing the percentages. And I thought, well, the text, if you actually have a look at the text, this is these were all written by our workshop teachers, and that's another point in terms of the relevance. I actually went and got our actual workshop teachers to write an account of what they think really matters in terms of workshop safety. If they were to narrow it down to one or two things, what do they would really want people to remember? And this guy's sort of made it about being consistent and disciplined and what he called playing the percentages, because he's a bit of a sporty guy who likes his sport. So I thought, why don't we create a scenario leading into that text? It says, Jason, welcome to AFL Friday Night Footy. You're playing your first game for the Sydney Swans as a rookie. Okay. Why would I choose the Sydney Swans? I'm in Victoria. Most of our learners are, they're from Victoria. There'll be a lot of them are quite passionate AFL football fans. But Sydney is an interstate team, and no one really sort of hates Sydney. Everyone sort of likes them a bit. So I deliberately chose that idea. Oh, plus they're the current reigning premiers, so they're pretty well known at the moment. So I thought that would be a really good team to feature as this team that you're playing in as a rookie in this scenario. So what's going on? You're playing in the back pocket, and Richmond have just kicked a point to go 1 point up. 1 minute remaining in the game. You notice how the arrows sort of pop up? I've deliberately timed it so that the arrows will hopefully pop up at about the time a reasonable reader would get most of the way through that text. Then the arrow will pop up. And that's harder to do than it sounds. You actually have to put text up and then read through it at a reasonable rate and then time it so that your transition arrow comes up. But that creates a more flowing experience for the learners. A teammate in the goal square tells you to kick in. What you do from here depends on what sort of player you are. Okay, so remember that the idea of the text was playing the percentages. We're in a scenario here in a game. Let's see how this works. Alright, those thumps were actually the sounds of balls being kicked, footballs being kicked. That's another little sound effect just for a little bit of realism that I wanted to poke into this. And this has a sort of game-like feel to it. So the idea is that they're kicking out from full back. The learner is playing for the Sydney Swans and they have to kick the ball out. And there are going to be 4 options here in terms of how they kick it out. And all they have to do is roll their mouse over one of the balls and the option pops up, and it gives a bit of a visual look as well as a quick description, and says, this is the option. If you want to take that option, you click on that number. And as you can see, the options are all slightly different, or very different actually. And out of these four, even though I haven't told the learners this, only one of them really is a sensible, reliable, disciplined way of kicking out from full back in a stressful situation. So let's look at the one of the ones that wasn't a good idea in this case, where it says, look, why don't you split the game open by playing on from the goal square, dodge 2 or 3 opposition players and roost the ball into open space. Look, I'm using language and terminology that our learners can relate to. So if they want that, even though it's pretty clear that's probably not a really sensible option, but if you want to be a hero, fine, go ahead and try that one, and then you get that ball spinning and the kick sound. And as it turns out, you get about 5 meters and you get tackled to the ground. You're penalized for holding the ball. Richmond, get a free kick and kick a goal, and you lose the game. And what happens? Well, you get to go to black and white, and you see a picture of dejected Swans players walking off the ground, because basically by you trying to be a hero and playing a very low percentage play out of full back, you lost your team the game. So it says, well, why don't you go back and just try that again? And all 3 of these first options here, basically they're different, but they all result in a loss. And this 4th one here is the probably the most sensible option. And there's a couple of hints in that text. It's a drill you've done hundreds of times in training. It's an essential play in your team's basic backline game plan. Right, so there's a few hints there that this is probably the best move. So you kick it in, you do well, the ball moves down the ground. See what happens. Instead of going to a defeat scene, you go to a victory scene, and the ball goes down, and Adam Goods takes a screamer and kicks a goal. And the coach mentions after the game specifically what you did out of full back was about playing the percentages, playing the safe option, playing the reliable option. And then it says, well, now look at another way of interpreting playing the percentages. If you click on that, it then takes you to your task for the second text, where you open up this playing the percentages thing, and then you read it and you answer the questions. So as you can see, we've used a scenario that our learners hopefully can relate to and be a bit entertained by as a lead-in to this, what by itself would have been a little bit interesting, I guess, but nowhere near as interesting if we give them a bit of real-world context and a bit of entertainment in the form of a very nice visual scenario to lead them into this part of the text. And this third part of the assignment, now that scene was deliberately chosen because we do metal workshop, and we do have a lot of learners who will work in the metal trades. So I didn't want to just have woodwork based scenarios. I wanted to have a bit of metal in there as well. Now I haven't put a scenario in this one. All I did was have that opening scene. Basically jumps into the quiz. Now this is what the rest of it looked like before I put in the scenario, so I still need to put in a scenario here to start this section of the assignment, because I've done it for the other 2. I'd like to do it for the third. And in that third text, it was about safety really being about attitude. What sort of attitude do people have around you? And in this case, our actual teacher who wrote this, he got his arm crushed in a log splitting machine that he had tagged out but a colleague, took the tags off and just turned the machine on while he was under it trying to repair it. So I'm going to come up with some sort of scenario-based activity that can lead into that idea. Whether it's tagging out something, whether it's looking at, I might expand it and look at a variety of different scenes where there's a clear warning not to do something or not to go somewhere, something being out of bounds, and what are you going to do, and then what are the results of that and why. And I might take them through a variety of those little sort of simple scenes before they go in and read this text. But the challenge to me is, how do I make it a bit intriguing, a bit interesting, and really catch their attention in that scenario format. So that's a challenge I still have ahead of me for that part of the assignment. But you can see in the end we'll have 3 scenarios. Each part has a very scene-based with a good soundtrack, sort of lead in, plus something that they actually do in a scenario sense, and hopefully I'm creating more of an experience for our learners. Maybe they're going to remember this a little bit, in terms of creating the triggers, the memory triggers for knowledge and skills. If they remember the football game part of this, for example, just using this alone probably wouldn't be enough, even though that's nice to look at when you just look at it. I don't think that by itself would be anywhere near enough to really catch their attention. So when we use something a lot more active and something related or correlating to what we're talking about, but in a different setting, something that they can really sort of understand straight away, hopefully that will create that memory trigger. So that is a bit of a look at the idea of creating an e-learning experience through scenery and your sound, your self-awareness, creating that self-awareness through the personalization of the name at the start. That name then is triggered throughout the material, and that idea of active scenarios that they need to participate in order to sort of get it. One interesting thing is that if I open up this assignment and just show you all the parts inside it, these are the basic quizzes and these are the texts. I think putting in those experiential frames around the sections probably took as long, if not a bit longer, to create and make than the actual quizzes and the content. And that's an interesting sort of principle to bear in mind. If you really do want to create an experience for your learners through your e-learning, you may need to dedicate the same amount of time that you did to the content and the quizzes. You may need to dedicate that amount of time again to those scenario-based, scene-based, music-based frames that go around it. Because I bought the images that go with the different scenes, and I also went hunting for soundtracks and purchased those. There's a lot of sort of research and trial and error that you need to go through in order to create those little frames that go around it. But I think, even though they're little things that the learners might click through in a matter of a couple of minutes, even though it might have taken you 4 hours to put the scenario together, if you've created the memory trigger for them, that just creates something that they'll remember and that they'll appreciate, doing at the time, then that's 4 hours of e-learning development and design that was very well spent, I think. So yeah, that's the creating a bit more of an experience with your e-learning. I hope that gave you some ideas.